Welcome back to our panel discussion on connected government, sponsored by Microsoft on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. My guest today, Dave Hebert from the U.S. Geological Survey, Susie Adams from Microsoft, and Andre Mendes of the Broadcasting Board of Governors. And we were talking, folks, about the idea of expectations. We talked a little bit about internal expectations, what your people inside your agencies and organizations are expecting. The other end of that is what your external customers are expecting, how they want to interact with you. That strikes me as dramatically more tricky because you don't know every single expectation somebody has. You can guess at them and make them pretty educated guesses. But Andre, I want to start with you here. Since you're dealing with people all over the world, you're theoretically exchanging information not just with the social media tools or other tools that we're familiar with here in the United States. I imagine you have journalists that are trying to navigate Weibo, if they can, do that in such a way that to not be detected, the social media site in China, and others around the world. Talk about meeting those customers, those end users, where they are in order to be able to connect with them on the level that you want to.
Sure. It's actually one of our biggest challenges because with the number of countries that we target and the very diverse economic aspects that they bring to the table, it brings us that widest portfolio of any broadcasting company, right? So we could be targeting somebody, let's say in Malawi or Somalia, that is listening on a shortwave radio that is hand-cranked or solar-powered because there's no electricity and batteries are too expensive, all the way to people in Shanghai that are very affluent, but that are very interested in finding out exactly what's happening within their government and within their country, and that have access to satellite television and the internet. And so in order to fulfill that range, we have to make sure that we're constantly listening to their choices of consumption of content. Because it continually migrates and at a very, very fast pace. I spoke about Malawi and Somalia, and the truth is that you look at the African continent and you see a veritable explosion in connectivity. Right, millions of cell phones that we have discarded as Generation 1, Generation 2, and Generation 3, and that are now being refurbished and sold at much lower prices in the African continent that bring to the table connectivity that these populations have never had before. And so their expectations rise dramatically because all of a sudden, some of the scratchy shortwave radio that they were listening to before is no longer good enough. And they want to participate. So we have to provide them with the apps and the tools that allow them to become participants, fully engaged participants in this, bilateral relationship that is new media, right?
What does that do, Dave, for strategizing and developing an infrastructure to meet the expectations of your scientists and the people that gather, the citizens that use the data that your scientists gather?
I think it's important that we're meeting people where they are, that we're not forcing them to go outside of channels they're comfortable with, creating competing solutions to things that already exist and frankly are better than what we could come up with. So if we know that a particular audience, and I think this puts a good burden on those of us who do communications. If we know there are particular audiences that are looking for particular information and they spend time in particular places, we should be giving them what they need where they are. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot more of a burden to figure out who are those people, where are they, what do they need. An illustration occurred to me a while back about the government delivering services and data, and this will resonate with people with kids or people who never managed to grow up or both, as I fit firmly into those two camps. If you go to the store and you're looking to buy some Legos or whatever your favorite building block toy is, and you see a fire truck, there's a box, there's a picture of a fire truck on it. Inside are instructions and pieces to build that fire truck. But if you're so inclined and so skilled, you could build a helicopter or you could build a house. And I think where government is going is it's not saying, well, we have a little data we can give you, the rest is stuck behind a firewall, but you can build a fire truck with these parts. And instead going to the point where you say, here are all the Legos you want. Mm-hmm. You build whatever you need and whatever you want. And we also would be happy to work with you to build things that we've never had before, that are bigger and better than what we've had. And I think that's where government provides, its expertise on what to do with those pieces. But mm-hmm. it's not telling people what to build or how to build it or keeping it from them. It's taking all the parts and going, go forth and build.
Yeah. Now, I know you can primarily speak only for USGS, but is it your sense that your colleagues in government are more comfortable with that concept than they were, say, 3 years ago or 5 years ago, when there was a tremendous amount of discomfort? Oh, we don't know what people are going to do with this data. We're scared about how this might be used. Has that fear dissipated, do you think?
I think so. I think that people have seen the benefits of opening it up. We were discussing before using tools like Twitter to gather information about people's experiences in earthquakes. The USGS also does that with climate change or climate information, where they ask people to observe bees and butterflies in their gardens to see when they're pollinating plants or doing kinds of things that they typically do at a certain time of year and stopped doing and maybe moved to a different time of year, and provide that information to us. I think a lot of the hesitation on the part of an agency like the USGS is actually from the other end, ensuring that the data we're providing has been checked, quality control, that it's been peer reviewed, and that we're not putting things out there that aren't really ready for prime time. And there's also always sort of this concept that this is my baby. I'm not ready to give it up yet. But I think people are seeing the benefit of that, and they're seeing that that's a tangible delivery of government mission. And they can go, I did that, I released that stuff, and people built these things with it. Yeah.
That's a pride of ownership issue. That's a pretty basic human need, Susie. That sounds like a really good way to demonstrate to a team inside an agency that, hey, this is okay to let this stuff go, and it's not going to disappear just because somebody's going to go use it.
Yeah, I really do think it's a cultural challenge, to be honest. I mean, it's just the way that people have done business for so long, right? I have data. If I'm going to release that data, I have to make sure that it's been scrubbed, that it's unclassified, that people have peer-reviewed it. And then when I release it, it's on the proper media, right, behind a firewall, on a server, in a data center that's manned by, people with clearances. And I think what we're finding now is people, I think they have kind of crossed that bridge and have come to the conclusion that, yes, we need to make the data available. I think we're still struggling, depending on who you talk to, on where to put that data and how to get that data out there, because there is a lot of it. A lot of it's unstructured. A lot of it's, frankly, not digital right now when you go talk to certain agencies, and they are struggling with how do I give the citizens access to it? And then once I put it out there, because there's a lot of data out there already, how do I make sure the citizens have the tools they need to be able to find that data? And that's, if you look at what data.gov and some of the mandates out there really are all about. And you can see, it's matured over the years, but it's still not that easy to be able to go out, for example, and find the data that Dave just talked about. How do I need to know where that website is. Maybe I can go to Bing or to Google, right, and do a search. It might come up, it might not. So there is, who has that authoritative data source, and how do I actually use that to my benefit, I think is still a pretty big challenge. And that goes to, if you look at one of the big trends, it is big data. Right? And how do we know that data is authoritative data and you can make informed business decisions out of it? Yeah. And if you look at the tools that are out there now, I mean, you could use Excel to go out. You no longer need a data scientist to be able to look at the Twitter feeds, right, and a number of other things that are happening across social media to pull that up and actually see trends, right, in a bar chart, whereas before it probably would have taken weeks to get that kind of analysis done. And so I think the tools are there. I think the willingness to let the data is out there. I think we're still struggling with the best way to do that, to make sure that the data is kept up to date and that the people that are using the data feel confident that the data is actually authoritative. Right, and they're making good business decisions on sound data.
Andre, I want to go back to something that you talked about just a moment ago, and that is the idea of listening to your end users and communicating with them directly to understand how they want to connect with you and receive and give you information. Is that just the straight-up old-fashioned listening to people and dialoguing with them however you're plugged into them? And if that's the case, then how do you anticipate new ways that people are going to want to communicate with you in the future?
It's a tremendous challenge because people are enormously desirous of providing you the information, especially in some of the situations that we encounter in some of our more restrictive regimes. And so they will find any possible way of communicating with you, including letters, telephone calls, via Twitter, via SMS, via email, you name it. They will try to do it. They will try to upload videos of circumstances, which in itself presents a problem. As Susie was talking about, the integrity of the data going out, right? We also have a tremendous challenge in verifying the integrity of the data coming in. Because as much as we love the fact that citizen journalists provide us with tremendously compelling content, unfortunately, a lot of times, that tremendously compelling content is manufactured, fabricated, and fed to us as reality when it really is not so, just by virtue of the environments in which we work. So, we have to accommodate just about every single way in which they want to communicate with us. But at the same time, if you're going to be a journalistic organization with journalistic principles, you have to make sure that what you're getting in is reality rather than a fabrication. So there's a challenge layer of scrubbing the data on the way in. Interestingly enough, some of the technology out there is enabling that by virtue of GPS location that is built into the metadata of video content and audio content. But it requires, another level in scrutiny in terms of that.
Dave, that idea of verification and cleanliness of data is not something that I think a lot of people probably think about when you think about connectivity in government, the subject of our conversation. But as Andre points out, it's tremendously important because if I'm not looking at you face to face, if I'm 100 miles away or 1,000 miles away, I'm relying on the technology between us and then what's in my brain to see if what you're sending me makes sense or to try to figure out if it's even you that's sending it to me.
I think in some ways this isn't really a technological problem, it's a policy problem, and it's making sure that if we always had for example, the USGS has very vigorous peer review and sort of data quality standards. Technology, barring some massive revolutionary change in the way that human beings exchange information, technology probably won't change the sort of spirit or philosophy of those standards, but it will change sort of the way that the information is brought in and all the different wrinkles, as Andre mentioned, the possible sort of curveballs that we're not expecting. But if you've got good policy in place, you've got good practices in place, you should be able to adapt that to technology. But but the point stands. I mean, I think it's not an area that I have a lot of experience in, but it is something we've discussed at the USGS about just taking data in from the public and incorporating it into sort of our body of knowledge and what we produce. We're supposed to be reliable experts in a particular field. It's not sort of just the Napster of scientific information where who knows what's being exchanged or downloaded on a computer. People need to know they can rely on what we're producing. Mm-hmm. And so that burden is a heavy one to make sure that we don't take things in, turn them into a product and put it out, and then find out that we've put a lot of people in a really bad spot, whether they're citizens or legislators or land managers or what have you.
So Dave talked about curveballs, Susie, and the idea that whether it's data connectivity, a data exchange, whether it's the person-to-person piece of this, things crop up that you weren't expecting, that you don't have a plan for. And I wonder if there are best practices or a standard operating procedure, or if each of these, potentially these wrinkles that people run across in agencies, are unique and have to be dealt with on an individual case-by-case basis.
I actually don't think it's unique. I think it's a combination of having that connectivity and being so connected. And earlier we talked about, literally you're working almost 24/7 now because you are so connected. And so, whereas before something you might have gotten an email and that might have alerted you to something new or an issue that you had to deal with, now you can get a text message, a phone call. I mean, it's almost, the number of inputs that you can get to actually disrupt what you're trying to do during the day is pretty overwhelming. I would say for a federal information worker, but also for the citizens as data is being pushed to them and how they're communicating back. And so I think what we're seeing now is kind of, as we move into the next generation of communication, the ability to kind of triage these things and the tools that we have. And whether that's through, the way that we manage email or the way that we manage Twitter, you're going to start to see just, Dave mentioned that using tools or building tools for the sake of having tools, we've all started to realize that we really don't want to do that anymore. That there are tools out there today that allow people to communicate, and we should take advantage of those, and then build on top of those or put a layer of abstraction above those, right? To kind of take out that noise and be able to disseminate, the noise down to other people, whether it's delegating or putting those and prioritizing, how you're going to address each of those. And I do think it is, again, just kind of the new world of work and the new world of communication. And it's that whole communication used to be unilateral. Now it's bilateral. And that is that's a lot of input to take in during a day when you have you already have a 40-hour or 60-hour, a week work week. So I think, 60 hours a day work week. Gosh, that was all messed up. 60 hours a week work week. That I think it is, that is one of the challenges I think we have to overcome, especially in the IT industry, is how do we deliver better tools that help you manage all that noise so you can quickly filter out things and prioritize. And I think we, in the IT industry, we do an okay job at it. I think we're going to see the way that, we do email. I can remember when we didn't have email. Sometimes I wish we'd go back there with the number of emails you get in your inbox now. Yeah. But it almost becomes overwhelming. And when you add Twitter, right, and other social media tools onto this, you can find yourself, literally trying to look at, how am I going to organize my day to be the most effective that I can be as an information worker in the government and serve the citizens that I'm supposed to be serving. And it is a real challenge. I mean, we're in the information age and it's information overload. And I think that's where you're going to start to see a huge uptick in the number of tools that are available to information workers to help them kind of filter out that noise.
Yeah, and that's actually where I wanted to go to wrap up this segment, Susie, is it strikes me that the providers like your company will be the leaders rather than the agencies at saying, hey, we're going to innovate in such a way and add this to something that you already use to make your work time more effective and more efficient, because those are the two things that it strikes me agencies need the most given where we are budget-wise now.
Absolutely. And you're already starting to see it, with our new operating system, Windows 8. You can see now we have a single device that does consumption and creation. That was really the big trend, is you had multiple devices. I can remember you walk through an airport and everybody's unloading, 18 devices as they walk through. Now what we're realizing is what people want is a single device that allows them to do the creation type of work that they have to do their job, but also gives them the consumption to be able to take in the data, whether it's from citizens or reading, whatever news and whatever consumption information they need to read right there, but not have to switch out the particular tool they're using, or and be able to switch easily between tools. So whether it's a large medium or a small medium, be able to have that single tool to do their job. And I think the big thing you'll see as we start to look at this again is you're going to start to see the ability to filter out kind of and prioritize things that you've never seen before with that as you grab that data. And I think that's how we're going to move forward.
This is the Connected Government Panel discussion sponsored by Microsoft, and will continue on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com in just a moment.